Hello guys, this is Panzermeister36 and welcome to a quick tutorial about how to make weld seams on 1/35 scale tanks. I recently had to do this on my little Russian T40 light tank, and I'd never done anything like this before at that scale, but it was pretty fun, and I kind of learned about how to do this a lot more, so I threw together a little tutorial for you guys here. Nothing too complicated, just a couple of tools needed, some glue, a knife, and some styrene rod. Of course, you could always use some stretch sprue if that's easier for you. Overall, this technique isn't very difficult. It doesn't take that long at all to do it, just if you're doing a full tank it does take quite a while, but it's very basic, kind of fun, relaxing, and I'm really happy with how it came out on my little T40 here. So let's get into it. First, let's take a look at all the tools I use to make weld seams. First of all, we need the material for the weld seam itself, which in this case is this styrene rod here, which is 10,000th of an inch. 10,000ths. You can use stretch sprue as well, but this is much more consistent. We also need some Tamiya extra thin cement or another plastic cement that will soften up and kind of liquefy the styrene rod. And we need some tools here to make the actual pattern. I have a couple of knives here, really just depends. I find the box cutter more comfortable in general, but sometimes I need the fine point of the X-Acto to make weld seams in hard to reach areas. Kind of just always depends on what the angle I kind of want is. So we're going to use the spare turret here from a T34 I don't need. And we're going to make some random weld seams on it. I know they're not in the right spots, but it doesn't really matter. So first I'm going to make some little marks here with a pencil, just to kind of figure out how much of a weld seam plastic I need. I guess I didn't show these tools in the intro there, but whatever. They're not really necessary. So now I'm just straightening this up and making sure it's in the right spot, and then I'll actually fix it in with a little bit of Tamiya extra thin glue here to make sure it's kind of set in place. For my process here, it's very important that the entire weld seam is glued on along its whole length, so make sure that there's no spots where it's going to pop off for the next step here where I cut it. But now what I'm doing is I'm basically cutting a bunch of little segments out of it. I'm not doing the weld seam pattern yet. The glue is dry. I'm actually just dividing the actual styrene rod into a bunch of little shorter sections of rod. So they're still straight on the model, there's just now a bunch of little gaps between them, and I find that this kind of helped out with the later steps. And as you can see, I'm using the box cutter here because at this angle it's just more comfortable to use. Later on I use the X-Acto knife because it's just better for that angle, but it doesn't really matter. You can use whatever knife you like. So now maybe you can see that we've actually divided the single piece of rod into a bunch of shorter ones. I also made this weld seam with a turret here just because this is a better angle to show everything from. And again, I'm doing the same thing. I'm actually basically just chopping it up into a bunch of little sections, kind of like you cut up vegetables or something like that. And if you don't have the entire thing glued on, as I mentioned earlier, little pieces will start to fall out between them because they're going to just fall off when you actually cut them from the next section of the rod. Now for the actual weld seam texturing. I'm using some of the Tamiya extra thin glue here to soften up the weld seam. As you can see, I'm wiping most of it off because I don't want to apply too much, otherwise it'll be absorbed and kind of ruin the texture of the turret. It'll just kind of burn into it, and that's no good. So I'm just applying a very small amount, but still enough that it's going to be absorbed by the plastic weld seam here, and then it will soften up a little bit for the next step here. I'm holding my knife at a 45-degree angle, about, and then I'm just kind of pushing downwards. I'm kind of just pressing against the weld seam and pushing it downwards like maybe half a millimeter, not very much. I'm pushing kind of downwards and also into the turret. So I get a different angle here, you can kind of see. And just doing this back and forth will give you that kind of shape of the weld seam, which is like a bunch of little kind of circles or bumps that are kind of overlaid over the next one. Kind of hard to describe, but of course you've probably seen a weld seam before, so you can imagine what it looks like. And this way we're doing it at an angle, kind of pushing it down, that kind of layers everything up and makes that little kind of overlaid bumpy pattern. I found that I got the best results if I went over it about 3 times in total. At least 2 times, maybe 3. Just going back and forth. A couple layers like this, and that really helps to just kind of stack it up. Sometimes you get a little bit of a zigzag going where they kind of push out a little bit to the sides once you do that kind of overlaying kind of technique there. So I just go in there when the glue's still wet and just kind of straighten things up like this. This works fine. You just kind of push it in and it'll stay straight. And then I'm just using the actual blade end of this knife to just kind of do a couple of fine touches here in some areas where I thought it wasn't kind of sharp enough. So here I try to show you the actual texture we've achieved vertically. You can see the actual like sharp edges and kind of spiky texture of it. Looks really cool. And I did a quick base paint here with some green just to show you. And compared to the weld seams that are molded onto the actual plastic, I think it does look better. And it's really just as simple as that. Probably took me no more than 15 minutes to do this weld seam here, including the drying time for the glue. Overall, very easy, very quick. I find that if you do them in sections like this, just one weld seam at a time, it goes by really nicely. This is something that you can use definitely on a tank if you want to add a weld seam, like there's always a missing weld seam on the reciprocator there on the Dragon Stugs. And also if your kit doesn't come with any, you have to add every single weld seam yourself, thanks HobbyBoss. Though it was really kind of fun, I learned something new, and also it does look really, really nice in the end. A big thank you goes out to my local club members here. They gave me some great advice on making the weld seams, including some great tips, showed me some of their lovely work, and also they recommended that I buy that 10,000 styrene rod, which worked much better than stretch sprue, which I've been doing in the past. Also a big shout out to Ricky at Ryan's Painting, who has supported me on Patreon. He has helped me out buy some more paints and products and kits and everything like that I need to make more videos for you guys, so a huge and awesome thank you to you. As always, thanks for watching guys, this is PansMars36, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.